Okay, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, Weston A. Price. An incredible book that I learned from How to Eat, Move and Be Healthy of Paul Chek. Paul Chek talks about this book widely in a lot of podcasts, a lot of his courses, blogs, and so forth. This is a masterpiece of this Canadian dentist that in the 1920, 1930 traveled for 10 years all over the world and visited 14 to 16 indigenous tribes, came to Australia, went to the Polynesian island, he went to the Alps of Swiss, he went to Alaska, he went to obviously the Canadian American Indian and so forth. He visited a lot of, he went to Africa, he went all over the world and visited 16 different indigenous tribes. And his question was why indigenous are healthier than white American or white men living in houses, living with this modern food, compared to the indigenous living in the wilderness with this, let's say, poorer food or scarcity of food and so forth. And basically he was able to analyze food, analyze the saliva of people, check for dental cavity, facial structure, skeletal structure, and because during that time, white flour, white sugar, pasteurized dairy, and white table salt and canned food became more and more readily available and was infiltrating through all these indigenous tribes too, was arriving to the indigenous tribes. So he was able to see members of the indigenous tribes still living in their traditional way, consuming their traditional food, being still thriving with health, and the one that were influenced by the white man food, which also Paul Chek talks about it and calls them the four white devil. Weston and Price calls them the white man food, how their health was degenerating and how they were experiencing more illness, more cavity, dental cavity, losses of teeth, narrowing of the jaw, and also not only on the adults consuming the food, but for example on children that were just born just after they were that food that was introduced to the people, and how the children were unhealthy and less healthy of those children brought up by just their tradition. And this book is pretty much the reason why all this movement of carnivorous, keto, paleo, you name it, the dehydrated organ meats and stuff, Weston and Price. Mostly they coming from Weston and Price. Yes, of course, there is not as much data as, like, for instance, Saladino book about the carnivorous code, the carnivorous diet, and etc. But it basically makes you understand that there is not a diet that fits all. And because he visited so many different climates, you could see that the food the different indigenous were consuming were completely different because the environment influenced what they could eat. They couldn't choose what they wanted to eat. They didn't have the supermarket. They had to just gather what they could find on their surrounding. And consequently, if you lived in the Pacific Island, you had more access to fruit, to roots vegetables, fish, and etc. If you live in Alaska, you couldn't find many vegetables because there is not vegetables during pretty much 10 months of the year. And consequently, the consumption of food that you're going to have is going to be mostly animal flesh of different sources and different type, or whether more fat, and they still all live healthy because also the food that they need. As an example, if you go to Alaska and you don't consume around the 85% saturated fat, the ability of your body to produce heat, because fat is a thermogenic food. However, as you digest fat and protein, your body temperature will increase. Your ability to live in that environment will be affected. You wouldn't be able to live on salad and tomato in Alaska and so forth. Many years later, Paul Chek goes nice and in depth into why there is not a perfect diet, but why a metabolic diet is more relevant for healthy living. Because and he goes and explains it on his book. So I highly suggest to purchase How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy if you are interested in that. There is another book which is the Metabolic Type Diet. I highly suggest to purchase Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. You can also purchase this one on Kindle. Actually, this one is my partner book. And I highly suggest to purchase also How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. Both amazing book. Both really interesting, really entertaining, full of information, very logical, very applicable, and interesting.